Good evening. Welcome to another episode of Pitchfork Radio, where we show the parasites the way to the shed. We are calling this episode Your Mortgage, the BLM and Sharia Law. I'm very pleased to introduce tonight's guests, Renee Powers and Ken Dost. This is a dynamic duo of information on how we've been duped into thinking that our property is ours and the mechanisms by which our property is being confiscated. Since we like to highlight the doers out there with this program, I would definitely put them right at the top of that list as well. Renee Powers is an investigative journalist and blog talk radio hostess of One Mom on a Borough and Two Moms on a Borough. Her research is partnered and networked nationally and internationally as needed, giving facts to stories that we share. With a patriotic foundation and standing upon her unalienable rights, she brings stories to the people and shares what mainstream media will not. In Ken Dost's former life, he was a designer of structures of many sorts, from the enormous custom to the smaller starter homes, multifamily and mixed use, commercial office to hotels to assisted living, low-rises to sprawling communities, and many others. He spent 25 years in the field of architecture, the last 10 of which were in business for himself, until it all came to a grinding halt one week in August of 2007. This resulting from actions taken on fears of collapse in commercial paper, further amplified by the bankruptcy filings of two Bear Stearns hedge funds. While everyone else has been stuck on the foreclosure defense hamster wheel, he followed his intuition, which led to a working theory on intellectual properties back in 2010. It was not well received. Some vilified him while others thought he was nuts, but he was on target and correct. He now speaks with great specificity, backed with a preponderance of evidence and documents of what he calls the most massive fraud in the history of the civilized world, actively concealed and hidden in plain sight. With that, I'd like to welcome you both, Renee and Ken, to the show.
Hi, Shelley. Hi, Ken.
Hi, Shelley. Hi, Renee. How are you guys doing? Thanks for having us on.
Well, I'm really excited because I know you guys are on to some really amazing stuff, and I cannot wait to get to the new amazing stuff. But for the people that haven't heard either of you before, could you lay some foundation on this basic topic of land theft, what Ken calls the mortgage foreclosure hamster wheel, etc., because I think we need to set a plate here that we can build upon for the rest of the show. And I also want to make sure we get to the connections between Sharia, BLM, you know, that type of thing. So with that said,
I'll give it a start, because Ken's going to follow up with a really good ad in there to get this show kicked off. Okay. Basically, what's happened is in the last, anywhere from 5 to 10 years, we've had groups of people, millions of people, lose their homes. When this all started, no one could believe it was happening. We had the foundation of, oh, they're deadbeats, they're not paying their mortgages. Then it became, well, they're not really deadbeats, but they should have never taken out a mortgage they couldn't afford. Then it became, well, actually, they could afford it, but then they had adjustable rates. And we went on this plateau of excuses that the mortgage propaganda was giving us in order to villainize all of the homeowners. And as you're going through this, as a homeowner, wait a minute, nothing we're hearing from the mainstream media is really what's happening to us. We're having our homes taken. These documents aren't even real. We have people signing things that are fraud. Nobody could understand what was going on, but those who are watching the news now and seeing how the mainstream media spins truth into total lies, where a goldfish becomes a shark, and we're on the other end of the teeth of this. So what's happened over the last 10 years is we've gone through mortgage meltdown, believing we had mortgages, first of all. And as the time has grown, we've realized as we look into these documents and we watch the lawsuits that, wait a minute, there first of all isn't any such thing as mortgage fraud. So if there's no such thing as mortgage fraud, what do we really have here? What we have here is contract fraud. And as this foundation started building, Ken was on the cusp on the other side, having many years started with the patent end of it, Carol and I had done some patent connections through Metropolitan Life, so we knew that there was no mortgage here. We knew that. So then what happened is, as we went into our research, found the insurance fraud, started tying it into the counties at the very essence of the county recorder, which we call the crime scene, the supervisors, the board of supervisors, the mayors. We started tying it all into the sheriffs, the police, saying, how in the world are all of these entities connected and all of them taking commissions, and yet the homeowner is losing out on the party, which is the lawsuits settling on the backside with the AGs and all these millions of dollars? Well, funny we should ask. Ken, I'm going to let you take over there, but this is kind of how it all started, was believing we had mortgages and realizing there never was one.
Yeah, well, what you had was you had a lot of technology that came out in 1998 with the legislation of State Street versus Signature Financial Group, and you had all this Home Modernization Act and the Gramm-Leach-Bliley bill, and all these legislative acts and all these the OCC deregulation. So this was all planned. And what you had was, well, we weren't paying attention to anything that was going on, but we couldn't have been paying attention because it was deliberately concealed from us. And what they did was they basically incorporated this term, this concept known as Blackacre. And Blackacre is basically a wholly mythical, well, it's virtual reality is what it is. And it's exactly what it is. So when, in 2001, when the UCC revised Section 9, Article 9, for secure transactions, what you have underneath that is you have patents, copyrights, and trademarks. Well, so and collateralizing them, meaning that they could be securitized and sold in many different pieces. So what happened here was they molded this this static instrument that is supposed to be a negotiable instrument into a plethora of different various business processes that could be patented now. And this was per the State Street versus Signature Financial Group. So what you have now is you have people that are led to believe that they're signing a traditional mortgage, just like our parents had, and that the note is a signed, sealed, and delivered instrument that sits in a bank vault somewhere, or is sold to an investor by way of traditional real property law, as far as endorsements are concerned, and change of title, so on and so forth. And so, as Renee was saying, here we go into 2005, 2006, and we're ramping up all of these mortgage loans, and we're promising people that you can be a part of the American dream. But what we realize now in the aftermath of this is people were set up, and they were set up through these patented processes. And what we found through these patented processes is, and let me explain what a patent is. A patent is typically, most people see what a patent is as being something tangible, something of a great invention, something like Alexander Graham Bell or Thomas Edison. And with both of those people, what you have is well, with any kind of inventor. I mean, we live in the United States of America, where you're allowed to fail. You're encouraged to fail. You're encouraged to make mistakes, because out of your mistakes, not a failure, we lived in a country that we can recover from that, where mistakes are forgiven, and we're allowed to succeed through our mistakes. But what we have here, we have a patent system that has been utilized to fail us, intentionally fail us, so that we can never get back up again. So that these patents are used to control us. And how do they do that? They did that through this impression, this archaic paradigm, and it is an archaic paradigm because it's been killed off, that we have home ownership in a mortgage loan. And so these patented processes, what we're looking at now is, as we get into these things and we're following the paths, some people say rabbit holes, and I'll say there's no such thing as a rabbit hole, because what you have now and what we have now, after 8 years, 9 years, 10 years of chasing foreclosure defense, we realize now that, hey, wait a second here. This whole thing has been engineered. It's been engineered down to the gnat's ass to give the appearance of compliance when in fact there is no compliance. To devise these various documents, document systems, loan origination platforms, credit analysis, all this risk management type stuff. And what we realize now is, hey, you know what? We're actually a commodity. So what they've done is they've made us a commodity in these transactions. There is no such thing as a mortgage loan. What there are business processes that take our signature and our living person and to redistribute that wealth to other people that other than ourselves. And as Renee says, we can track this right down through the county administrators, through the courthouses, through the judges, all the way up to the banks, and all the way into the sheriff's department, and the whole system is just crooked because everybody is in this payment stream, and it plays out very nicely because the media played it great. The media painted us all as deadbeats, liars, and cheats. Hey, they didn't pay their mortgage, which, you know, and they did it brilliantly. I mean, I think Renee will agree with me. What they've done here is brilliant.
Yeah, not only is it brilliant, but to bring it in for those who may not have heard us speak of this before, the simplest terms are when you pull out those documents, the contract. First of all, like when our parents, you know, I'm 55, so I think I'm 55. Either that or I'm going to be 55. Either way, I'm there. I feel a lot older after what we've been through. But what happened?
Oh, yeah.
Our parents, when they went and signed for their home loan, and I remember when my parents bought a house for $9,000, and I was with them, and I remember them sitting around this table and everybody signing documents, not just my parents, but the bank representatives as well. And then I think about the first home I bought with my husband at the time, and it was through Downey Savings, and it was actually through Downey Savings, and their signatures were on the documents, and it was kept with Downey Savings. So as we start thinking about the fact what constitutes a contract, well, it takes two parties. It takes two signatures.
Right.
Well, what we now know is the two parties in the contract are actually both, one is us and one is our legal person.
Right.
Yes.
There is no one else in this contract besides us and our
Right.
legal person. That is the two parties, but only one party signs. And I want people to think about this. If you have a business and you have Joe Blow's Plumbing, oh gosh, that probably wasn't a very good analogy, but let's say Joe Smith Plumbing. Okay.
There you go.
Good Lord. Anyhow, so you have Joe Smith Plumbing, and you, stop it, Ken. I'll make you show your hair.
Okay. No Einstein, Renee, from you. No Einstein, okay?
So you go to sign for your Joe Smith Plumbing, you have to sign Joe Smith as power of attorney for Joe Smith Plumbing.
Right.
You don't just sign Joe Smith, because that is, so that when we went and we autographed is really what we did, these documents, they neglected to tell us that they were truly using the legal fiction that was what we were birthed to in our birth certificate and our Social Security accounts. A lot of people may not get that, but it's as simple as our business is our all caps name, just like Joe Smith Plumbing, and our business was what was used to utilize the funds or the credits. There are no funds. Banks do not loan money. They can't loan their own money.
Right.
So these off-book credits came through them accessing our treasury account that we didn't even know they were using. So all of these credits were given to our business, Joe Smith Plumbing, which is our all caps name, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we were not only the buyer, but we were the seller at the same time. So under the Metropolitan Life buy-sell, and through these documents, they set us up on a platform of insurance payouts.
Yep.
And of defaults that ultimately were wrapped into our living estate. There is a section in our documents on the second page for most that says you as the person have the right to encumber your estate. And then
and they use the word seize. And they don't use it with a Z. They use it with the letter S. And when they're talking about seizing the estate, we're not talking about real property here. We're talking about the living person. And this is what attaches to what Renee is talking about as far as the all caps name in our business name. What they're coming after is they're coming after our productivity. They're coming after everything that we will ever earn. Our real property, our personal property, and this intellectual property that they've derived from our signature. And so it goes back into what is the formation of this contract? What is the basis for this contract? It's not a real property loan. It's really about capturing our signature and capturing our real person, our living estate.
With a power of attorney. What we gave them was a power of attorney without knowing it, to do anything they wanted to any part of our lives, our home, our properties. And when it says you are seized to encumber your estate and your properties, there's two separate words there, estate and property. And what Ken just announced to you was everything you have, your children, your land, your bicycles, your cars, your automobiles, excuse me, anything that is your personal property is intellectual through your signature and the power of attorney. And
this I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but just to reiterate, this goes directly to UCC 9 and the revisions to UCC 9 that created the secure transactions. And under UCC 9, what comes under it? Intellectual properties, general intangibles, patents, copyrights, and trademarks. So it was beautifully molded into this this revisions. And so we've literally come from the real property or the real tangible world to they transferred us to this intangible world called Blackacre, to where they can do whatever they want with us without our knowing it.
And that is, the Blackacre is the virtual world.
Yes.
And when you start talking about virtual world, the very essence of the land records, where we have documents that are recorded, whether they're real or not, they get to be recorded there through what's called a electronic recordation system.
Right.
We know in Orange County it's the secure system, all capital. And what we thought originally when they said you have documents recorded through the secure system, we thought it meant safe.
Secure.
Secure. Yeah. Well, it's secure for the title companies, the escrow companies, the banks, the debt collectors. And what we now know is what we're going to tie in here, because a lot of people want to hear how this works, and then we'll come back around again. But when you start talking about your estate, we know, and for all of you listening who've been heads involved in Oregon, in land grabs throughout the United States, through the ranchers, through the homeowners, the BLM is tied directly into our living estates, and if and when anyone passes interstate, all the funds run through the BLM. Now, Ken, I'd like you to take over from here to explain how important that is for money laundering, because we know that the platform, what you have to do is they say, how do you get it as far from us as you can for responsibility? The way you do that is you layer things. You layer them through LLCs, you layer them through departments, you layer them through bureaus. So the U.S. Incorporated has hundreds, thousands of layers of ability to hide things electronically and hard copy through these digital platforms, and we know many of them are the straw platforms for the laundering of dirty money out of the country, into the country, through grants and through patent programs.
And through foundations. I mean, that's the way that they repatriate funds is through foundations.
Such as the Clinton Foundation, perhaps?
Yes. Well, I'll cite you an example. In Own It Mortgage's bankruptcy, what they did was they cast away, the bankruptcy court allowed them to do a stalking horse bid on their de minimis assets, which of course are their trademarks, because they went bankrupt. And when you go bankrupt, your trademarks pretty much go down to de minimis. So what they allowed them to do was to do a stalking horse bid and sell them off. So what they did is they sold them off to a interested party or close connected party through the trademark and through a security agreement registered underneath the trademark through a family trust, which happens to be a Sharia law or a Muslim family trust, the Khaljian family trust. And then as soon as their bankruptcy cleared, what they did was they assigned it right back to William Dallas, the CEO of Own It. And what happens is Merrill Lynch sets up these directors and CEOs of these bankrupted companies with $100 million offshore insurance accounts that they can collect on through a foundation once their bankruptcy clears. Now, Bill Dallas did that to his wife, up in Santa Barbara. His wife has a foundation of some sort. Forgive me, I don't recall the name of it offhand. But as soon as their bankruptcy cleared, what happened? Boom. He started a foundation. She started a foundation. He's the CEO of that foundation. And all this money, millions and millions of dollars, came flooding into this foundation. So that's how they repatriate these funds and bring them back on shore. They bring them up. They bring them through the grant system. They bring them through the foundation system. I mean,
it's laundering.
It's laundering. It's laundering.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. It's laundering. And that's why these patents are so important. The patents are so important because it's the blueprint for exactly what they've done and how they've used us.
Okay, let me ask a question here before we get too far away from the commentary about Sharia.
Absolutely.
Is that not related to the philosophical abhorrence that they have of usury?
Yes.
Well, yes, it does. It goes against. See, there's Muslims don't believe in paying interest. So
right.
what they've done is on our side, the consumer side, they say, okay, you're paying interest only in one of these like 327 type ARM loans, but on the back side of this, or on the other side, on the secret side of this, what they've done is they converted us into a lease. So we're paying rent payments, of course, which all has tax exemptions and loopholes and so on and so forth. So what happens then on the Sharia side of this? Now you got this the Muslims or not necessarily the Muslims, but under this concept of Sharia law. That they can come back and they could purchase what they call a free asset. And how do they do this? Well, they set you up into force and place insurance, and then they force you into taking over the property taxes. And then the only other step they have to do now is they have to foreclose on you, and they have to default you. And once this occurs, voila, guess what you have? You have what's known as a free asset. So on the Sharia side of this, the way this is set up, they can come back in now and have an all-cash transaction. So our $500,000 house for a de minimis value that they can buy out right out from underneath you for cash. So
and think about this, and usually what's happening is, again, they have straw companies doing the purchasing.
Absolutely.
So at these sales, at these fire sales, you'll have someone on the phone and you won't know who they are, and yet they'll be saying they're buying these homes and they're credit bids. The other thing is doing this is that you have the platform of these sales going on, but they're not really sales, because the documents are clear to say that you are, as a bidder, you are not bidding on the property, you're bidding on the lien, because all that's there is paper. There is nothing, the only thing there is paper, and nothing's tangible. It's all virtual. And right now we've gone from the overseas banks, who then came in and, basically, excuse the expression, bitch slapped all the big banks here in the States, saying, what in the world are you doing? You got yourself caught in all this derivatives and the 2008 debacle. So what happened was then they sold off the paper, and they sold off the paper to the cockroaches. And when I say cockroaches, I mean the attorneys are the ones doing all of this. The cockroaches are the ABA, the American Bar Association holders of debt collections. And Valerie Lopez has been very vocal about this. The debt collectors have no standing to foreclose, and yet they are the ones, through the attorneys and the straw companies, like Quality Loan Servicing has McCarthy and Holthus. They pretend to be separate, but they're one and the same. The phone rings directly into both after hours. So you have no separation of attorneys and debt collector, and they're supposed to be a trustee. And as a true trustee for a foreclosure, they're supposed to be unbiased and looking out for the best interests of both sides. But we know that those trustees are not looking out for the best interest of homeowners, because they are looking out for their bottom dollar, which is the commissions being paid on the backside through these straw companies, through the money laundering, that is then going to everybody but the actual parties. Like in the force-placed insurance, for instance. In force-placed insurance, there's escrow accounts. These escrow accounts have funds sitting in there because, like you pointed out, they're being paid, supposedly, by these debt collectors who've bought the paper so that they can give the facade and the appearance that it's not, because they're still paying everything as if they're not in default. None of these are defaults. The monies are just swapping hands. So there's nothing in default, period. So what happens is, like in my case, I made an insurance claim against Select Portfolio Servicing because they were pretending to be the mortgagee. And they're not the mortgagee, right?
Right.
So I send everything in. I get the California Insurance Commission involved. I get back the paperwork that says, oh, I'm sorry, we can't pay this claim because they're the mortgagee. So I'm like, okay, hit yourself, forehead slap, palm slap, because you know they're not the mortgagee. Well, what happened was, though, that I was told to request all the documentation. So they sent me all the documentation, and sure as heck, my all caps name was additionally insured, even though they said it was just for who? The mortgagee. Who is the true creditor? The all caps name.
Sure.
So it's really you, with them additionally insuring themselves off of the back of you through your signature, that gave them the power of attorney. Because with those escrow accounts comes responsibility. Escrow accounts cannot cancel and pass to another account without the signature of the actual holder of that escrow, which, guess who? That is the all caps name, you. So in order for them to transfer to the next insurance policy and have that escrow account, they had to sign documents on your behalf, which is all fraud unless you knew about it. So what they've done, like Ken said right from the beginning, we were tricked. We had no meetings of the mind. They did everything, they being the brokers, the lenders, the warehouse lines of credit, all of them, they knew that we the people, we the moms, dads, living, breathing, were using our autograph and giving them power of attorney over our entire life, our children, and everything in between. So when you go into that court, that judge has your power of attorney.
Ken, it looks like you're in here twice.
Yeah, Ken,
a lot of feedback.
Can you hear me?
Oh yeah, we can hear you twice.
Okay, hold on a second. Okay, how's that?
You're still in twice.
Okay, I don't know why that is.
Let me see if I can boot you off of one of these calls here.
Yeah, boot me out, yeah, because my cell phone, How's that?
No, we still got you double here. Hang on, let me see if I can do anything from this end.
Okay. Yeah, I got the echo too.
Yeah, that's why, because the system thinks you're in here twice. Hold on, let me see if I have any options here.
Okay, how's that? Is that better?
Yeah, there you go. You got yourself muted on one of them. So basically, where I was at on this is that when you have knowledge of what you're doing, you have a contract. But when you have an unexecutory, meaning it's not completely executed, contract, we could not have a completed contract, because in order for them to actually sign that contract, someone would be taking responsibility upon that signature for the fraud from the get-go.
Right.
So they don't sign anything. They just pass it along through endorsements that are not even lawful. And again, remember, the BLM is tied into this through money laundering, into the patents that end in the Sharia law that allows for the laundering of all of this. And the reason they're taking all the land is not just for the minerals, but because when you take the land and you have the management of it, you have the ability. Think about Oregon right now, where Grasty is, and he's on all those committees, and in just 3 grants alone, it was $500 million. In a small county of less than 7,000 people, $500 million. Okay, that's a lot of money. Then you start thinking about him being the probate judge, and how the probate judge, not only the probate judge, but he's in control of all the vital statistic records and the electronic recordations.
Right.
So the man has the ability to create fake cases, which we know all the courts across the country are creating dockets, actors' actors, bad state actors. Think about when they say acting attorney, acting judge. There's a reason it's called acting. It's not because it's the judge. There is no judge. So what we have here is the ability for them to put in place the essence of pretending to do probate cases where millions of dollars are coming through. And I mean every court. Think about this. Why is it a probate court handles wills, correct? And when you think of a will, when you sign your living will, you only have to have 2 signators on there with you. It doesn't have to be notarized, but you have to have 2 witnesses on there.
Right.
Because that's your private business. Now what happens is when it goes through the probate and it gets probated out, the BLM's involved in all of that because we are agriculture. We are livestock. We are not living, breathing men or women. On the backside, they're treating us as livestock. So how do you launder livestock? BLM is the perfect U.S. Department of Fish and Game. These are all animals. So they have created a beautiful platform, and as Ken calls them, the eco-terrorists that run around with these platforms, like they did in Oregon. Oh, they're hurting the birds. They're ruining the lands. They're ruining the artifacts. When in essence,
they're not allowing us on the Bundys aren't allowing us on public lands. Get off.
Yeah, yeah. And we know that once people hear this and start thinking about their own lives, looking into how their own family had things probated. Maybe when mom passed away, you had some weird things happen in the probate court that you couldn't put your finger on, and you wondered why the BLM or agriculture was involved on the final documents, or there was anything related to agriculture. Well, it's because you, dear people, dear living, breathing men and women, they're considering us cows. They're considering us animals. And that, dear friends, is why none of these documents you autographed are real. None of these documents were a mortgage. They were all set up to steal your, I get to say this one, intellectual property.
There you go. Hey.
Which is what your signature allowed them to do. And when you go to the mailbox and you find there's documents in there where this debt collector is telling you you're being foreclosed upon, they also are committing multiple sins and crimes because they are not allowed to use your intellectual property if in fact you have claimed it through a DBA and name holder. And I'll get into that in a little more instance in a few minutes, but I want those listening to hear it's this simple. You found a home. You loved this home. You want to buy this home. You go to buy this home, and they tell you to sign here, sign here, sign here. They were doing 97%, 100% loan to value. A lot of people. I wasn't one of those. But you have people say, oh, they're deadbeats. They didn't have to put anything out to buy that house. Well, what I'm going to tell you is, yes, they did. Yes, you did. Anyone did, because it's just like you had $100,000 sitting in a retirement account, and you decided you were going to go buy this house and you were going to pay cash for it. So you withdrew that $100,000 out of your trust account and paid this house off. You went on living thinking it was free and clear. It's the same thing that happened at closing through your trust account that they, the banks, the brokers, the debt collectors, accessed on your behalf, because when all was said and done, there was a zero balance due.
Exactly.
What you allowed them to do was tie you into future payments that you obligated yourself to pay them so that they could create the securities, the bonds, and the insurance and life insurance policies. Take it away, Ken.
well, yeah, there's a lot to catch up on to catch that span on. Let's talk about commodities for a minute. And what is a commodity? And a commodity is cattle. It's a bale of cotton. A commodity is something that is a fungible, it has a limited shelf life or a limited time lifespan, and then it's no longer good anymore. It's expendable, and that's what they've done with us. What they've done with us is they and the cattle is a great example, because there's a patent, and there's they patented everything. But this particular cattle patent that I've come across here, which falls right in line with the BLM conversation, land grabs, and also the commodity aspect of this, is they set up a system where they have set up a primary bank and then a system of guarantors. So they've got a Ponzi scheme going where they're exchanging money, electronic money between each other, and they're making money off of the difference between either interest rates or the currencies by taking these things overseas. And so that's how this keeps this thing going. But what they've done with us, though, they need the pawns. Well, we're the pawns, and as the pawns, what we're doing is when we sign those mortgage loan agreements, what we think is a mortgage loan is, no, we didn't get anything. What we got was an installment lease. We agreed to allow them to take our ownership, our legal ownership in a financial asset, which is why it's so important that they get that first initial legal assignment, in MERS especially. And they then have MERS there to mask the transaction and mask title, if you will, so that they can sell this thing time and time again. And they're doing it by putting it to the DTC, which is a Depository Trust Corporation. They're pledging it as a security so they can trade in the security. They're trading it through Boney, Bank of New York Mellon. They're trading it and selling it every 180 days within the 1031 exchanges. So they're making a multitude of millions and millions and millions of dollars off of this alleged principal amount, but that we never got a single nickel for. And so the question here then becomes, why the hell would I give up my legal ownership of a valuable asset to somebody and not get a nickel for it? And worse than that, and get defaulted upon. Well, this goes into the, now we get into securitization. And what is the definition of securitization? Because this is important to understand what these contracts are. Most people believe that securitization is the pooling of loans for sale to a Wall Street bank or an investment bank, and they in turn set up and establish a special purpose vehicle. Vehicle is a very, very important word here. Vehicle into which they deposit these pool of loans, and then out of which they issue certificates. Now that, by and large, is a true definition of securitization. However, what they did not tell us was the patented version, the expanded version of securitization, which takes one financial instrument and breaks it down into at least two separate components. A year's a term's interest, which we can call or restate as an interest only, or as a lease payment, and then a future repurchase or remainder interest, which we can call an annuity. So there is no such thing as a present-day loan transaction. What I mean by present day is when you're sitting there signing those loan documents and you think you're walking out, you got the keys to legal ownership, and you're a homeowner and everything. You don't have that. What you've done is you've committed your signature and your real property so that they can generate fees and compensation on this, running credits through a separate account because they've separated the accounting records to keep separate books. And so what you have is you've given them carte blanche into taking your real property, your personal property, and any kind of intellectually derived, I'll get that word out, derived property that they can come up with these derivative patents through hedge funds, through derivatives, through different types of scams and schemes and scandals that they got going, and generate millions, I mean hundreds of millions of dollars off of just a simple $500,000 mortgage. And we don't get a nickel for it. So what
and this is in perpetuity because it never expires. It just, like you said, it just gets kicked. The can gets kicked down the road, or it goes into a subcore, or it goes into a shell fund somewhere, or a foundation. So it has perpetual life while they slowly drain your very existence from you. And this is what the parasites do best, and that's why I call them parasites, because in and of themselves, they cannot live without a host. In and of themselves, they produce nothing that anybody would freely purchase or have any desire to consume if it were not being fabricated and fraud created around it.
I love your analogy there about parasites and about having a host. You're absolutely right. That's a beautiful analogy because yes, they have to have a host. They have to have that primary obligor. Who's the primary obligor? It's us. What are they holding us to? They're holding us to our signature. is what they're doing. And yes, they kick everything down the road. Now here's the thing. Now here's where the deadbeats, liars, and cheats come in. So you're back in 2005, and you purchase what you think is a house, and you get sucked into one of these ARM loans, say a 327, which was a 3-year interest only, and then followed by recessed to a 27-year variable rate. And so what you have here now, the anticipation is that you're going to refinance after 3 years because you don't want to roll over and reset into a variable interest rate that's based on the crooked LIBOR system, so you don't know what the interest rates are going to be. So the anticipation is that you are going to refinance. Now here's the thing. What we've entered into now is a put option call. We entered into a security agreement to where the undisclosed third-party beneficiary to an investment contract that they're betting whether we're going to refinance at the end of that 3 years or whether we're not going to refinance it in 3 years. Well, see, now in a conventional mortgage, in a signed, sealed, and delivered negotiable instrument, you can only sell the thing once. So if I originated that loan to you and we signed the documents and I have that paper tangible document, I can sell that thing once and that's it, and I have no control over that anymore. I sell it, I do the chain of title, I do the endorsements, on it goes to somebody else, and I lose any kind of monies from that because that's it, it's gone. I've got my commissions, I've got my fees. What they've done here, though, they've created the most basic form of a copyright derivative, which is, and this is per copyright law, the most basic form of derivative is altering a copyrighted work, but in some manner, shape, or form that does not detract from what the purpose of that copyrighted document is for. So think of the Fannie and Freddie standard uniform instrument. When you put your signature upon that document, you've created the most basic form of a derivative. Now, why is that important? Because you didn't get a lease, and because you didn't get a loan and it's a lease. Now you've given somebody control over your life and control over that copyrighted document that they can sell it just like a book. So imagine making 1,000 Xerox copies of those documents that you signed and packaging them up and sending them off to Borders Books. And Stock Boy unloads it, he stamps it 1995, he puts it on the shelf, and they sell it. It's the same damn thing here. And the person
that's a very important way to package the information, because those of us that have been playing these games for a number of years have a little bit more awareness as to terminology and that type of thing. But the way you just package that up as though it were a book being sold to a bookstore, that's a real crucial analogy that people need to grasp a hold of.
Yes, it is, because now what you have instead of selling that fixed tangible negotiable instrument one time, you have somebody that has control over that electronic document, that copyright derivative, and selling it time and time again for fees and compensation. So how is it possible to sell one real property more than one time? How is it? It's possible because we're dealing with intellectual properties now. We're dealing with patents, copyrights, and trademarks. So let
me add here, what you're also dealing with is electronic recordation. You're not dealing with the genuine document. You're dealing with what they call the original, but it's actually a copy. It's just like you took a dollar bill and took a picture of it 100 times. You have the dollar bill, but you've sold off pictures of it as if it was the $100 bill or the dollar bill, hundreds, thousands of times. It just keeps getting sold. So what you have is an electronic recordation system that uses the conduit of the county recorders, aka Crime Scenes of America, with the blessing of the Board of Supervisors, the county attorneys, the county CEOs. They all know these documents are not real.
Right.
They're just copies. So when you go into court and you want to do discovery and you're asking for the genuine documents to be produced, the judge is looking at pictures of documents and saying, oh, they have it. They're not even being forced to give the genuine document. So when you record a document into the electronic system, it does not have to stand the same responsibility to fraud that the original does. When you record that document, a picture, and they send it back to you, the thing is you can record electronically, so they never even see the original or the genuine, And it doesn't even have to have the same standards of signatures and everything. But they say in the event that you are going to hold it to being responsible to being real, the original has to be shown. So the original, the genuine, not the original, they say original, but it's the genuine wet copy that has to be produced. That is the only document when you go into that courtroom and the judge knows it. That is the only document that stands to fraud. The rest of it are just electronically recorded documents that can be anything. It could say Santa Claus on the line.
Exactly. Or it could say absolutely nothing, and then they can go back later and fill in the blanks to justify whatever they're trying to accomplish with.
And this is why people say, how could he let that happen? That was a robo-signer. That signature wasn't even a real person. Well, because he knows it doesn't matter unless he has the genuine document in front of him.
Exactly.
Well, and here's the problem. Now you get into, this is the problem the past 8 years, 9 years. You know, we're going into court, and our natural inclination is to our foreclosure defense, to argue against change of titles, and why aren't these change of titles present? Why aren't the endorsements made? And we're getting our butts kicked in court. Why? Because on the backside, the judges are involved in this. They're in the payment streams. They're in the money streams for the release of monies from bonds that pay into the judges' pension funds, the state municipalities, the state utilities, so on and so forth. So the minute that we defend a foreclosure, what happens? We acknowledge that there's a debt, and that's the worst mistake that we're making, because we're not recognizing that these are not a debt. We're going in and arguing on a platform, on a foundation of error, not on a foundation of fact. We're going in on this myth, on this deception, on this most massive fraud, and that we're signing a negotiable instrument. These are all
what we're doing is it's contract. It's just all contract. It's not. It has nothing to do with anything. Our whole country has been based on contracts, verbal contracts, handshakes. Back in the day when, like, you have your little picture there of the 3 patriots and the drums. May we segue a little into this now, Shelley? Do you mind if I go?
No, I do need us to move towards the conversation we had earlier, Renee.
Good. That's where I'm headed then.
Okay, and then Ken, I need to discuss what's happening with what you're doing right now.
Right. Okay, so what I'm going to talk about right now is how do we as men and women do anything to protect ourselves, to protect our autographs? Well, for those listening who recognize what all caps versus capital and then lowercase means, your all caps name is your business. Your lowercase is you. And what we're seeing is that you have to claim that name because they're using it. This is how they're using your intellectual property. You have to rescind all previous power of attorneys through the Internal Revenue Service. Then you need to do, and again, this isn't legal advice, this is just what many of us have done, and I'm sure a lot of you have seen the articles saying that many people are giving up their U.S. citizenship.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't mean what people think it means. What it means is we're all Americans, born on the ground, on the earth, on our area. We are Americans, as I'm a Californian. Shelley, you're an Arizonian. You're an Oregonian. We all are state citizens, not state all capital, but that's what we were born to as the living. You were born, but you were given a birth certificate. The birth certificate is the legal fiction of which they created, just like we're talking about, all of these bonds, securities, and everything, and it is fact. We'll do a whole nother show on that, but for those listening that recognize it. So you need to do a DBA. Many do it out of Minnesota because out of Minnesota you still can do unincorporated. Mm-hmm. When you do a business, you don't even have to register it if it's your name. Think about that. Okay, but when you're using it as your name, you're not realizing that that is your business anyhow. That's how you were intended to do business. So what we say is we've all done a DBA as our all caps name with our addresses, and then you as the living man or woman are the name holder. So it separates you from the business and puts you into the living realm. Mm-hmm. So you do your DBA, and we have proof that this is what is needed to do. You know, She-Wolf, today we were talking, and the Attorney General told her that he couldn't help her until she did one important thing, and that was her doing business as. Doing business as can be considered fictitious business name, multitude of terminology that you could use for that, but basically you're doing it unincorporated because it is your intellectual property. You don't need to record it in every state of the union because unincorporated can cross lines because it is yours. This isn't like you're saying Joe Smith Plumbing. You're actually saying Joe Smith is the business.
Right.
So you do your DBA, and then what you have is any time you go where you have a foreclosure or you have anyone using your all caps name, they can't lawfully use that. Unless they've been given the permission to use that, that legal name cannot be used. So you've now claimed your name. You can open your business account as your sole proprietor, unincorporated, which is non-taxable. And that's how you do your business. That's not meant to get loans and everything else. That's a lot of people are talking A for V's. What I'm talking right now is simply doing the process to separate you, the living man or woman, from the birth certificate, Social Security situation. You were born, you weren't birthed.
Exactly.
Okay, so as we recognize that is the way, then anytime you're doing anything contractually, you have the ability to separate yourself. Like when they take and say you get arrested. We have people sitting in jail right now. Many of us know they're wonderful people. They've truly not committed any crimes. Jury nullification could wipe anything out that they're doing. But they are being charged as their all-cap name, not as the living man or woman, because the court cannot sue the living man or woman. The court cannot sue the living man or woman. It has to be your business entity. Now,
well, because it's all being done in commerce. Everything is commerce.
Well, and that's interesting you mentioned that. Just to add something to that real quick before Renee continues. All these patents, trademarks, they fall underneath the USTPO, the United States Patent and Trademarks Office, which just so happens to be an entity of the Department of Commerce.
Go figure.
Yep.
And what they're doing here, when you talk about fictitious names, we can prove this, and we could show this unequivocally with the preponderance times 1,000, that they're doing this through security agreements that are recorded underneath their trade names on the trademark side of the USTPO, where they specifically talk about fictitious names and creating fictitious names. So what they've done here is we've got these people dead to rights in everything that they've done. But go ahead, Renee. I'll let you go back.
And that ties into the LLCs and the layering of straw companies. And I want to bring up the 60 Minutes program that we saw maybe 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, where they took 16 attorneys and they set them up as if to bring in dirty money from out of the country. Only one attorney out of those 16 said he wasn't comfortable. Another one of them in that group was actually the president of the American Bar Association. They gave proof of how to commit the crime and hide the monies coming in so that the man who was bringing the money, the pretend man, would not have his name attached to anything. And it's always done through LLCs and strawmen and straw companies. So
and think of it as a dolphin. When they want to sell stocks and bonds, they jump up above the ocean, but when they want to conceal what they're doing, they go underneath the ocean and they go to the private LLCs, and they come back up again. They go back down, just like a dolphin swimming through the water.
And that's bankruptcy as well. The bankruptcy courts are perfect for the money laundering because they're using the treasury accounts, and the attorneys know all of this. This was a brilliant platform.
Well, let me interrupt you for a second, though. The foreclosure mill attorneys don't know squat. What they're doing is they're operating the filings that they're filing. We can show that a lot of them are not even doing themselves. They're coming from a patent-to-computer program that is filling out the actual foreclosure claims that they're just simply putting their name on and submitting that. I know that from my own case.
Well, that's strawmen. They're the strawmen. The attorneys they know they're being used.
But they're being paid well for it, and it's putting bread on their table, and so they do have a personal vested interest in continuing the process.
It's this concept of keeping an arm's length distance between everything.
Right. And this is where we come to what's been happening for the last 10 years is the homeowners have been beaten up and spit out, kicked to the curb in all of these lawsuits, because the lawsuits have all been going in the way of the big lawsuits of insurance payments. These are insurance payouts. So when you have now spent years with investors, defaults, all of the insurances that pay out everybody who harmed us as homeowners, the only thing left now to actually benefit from as an attorney is to start representing the homeowners, because now you have the E&O insurance, you have the other side, which is not as much as they were getting previously, but now they've made all the money they can off the insurance side with the investor streams and the hedge funds and all of the lawsuits there. So now you have to go to what insurance is left to collect.
Well, what they're doing, though, is what to expand.
Well, I'm leading into, Ken, for you to open this conversation up as to why now we're going to be handling and having help from very prominent attorneys that we are not going to name, because many of us really have had a bad taste in our mouth about attorneys. But we also know that there are good people out there. There are good sheriffs, there are good police, there are good public servants, and we know that they're ready to see us now prevail. And they want to see those who have harmed people, who've caused deaths, who have stolen land and lives, to actually be held accountable. And so what we're doing now, as Ken is going to present to you with, we can't go into strict detail, but what we're going to tell you is now there is going to be a platform for a lawsuit that is based on contract, very simple. And as they all say, keep it simple, sweetie. It only takes one document of fraud to prove your case. Well, right at closing, that was proven, and it is known that none of these were loans. So Ken is going to explain to you that we now have the ability to take this platform across this United States of America, lowercase, and go into each recorder's office, into each county commissioner, into each attorney, into each debt collector, into each servicer, into every nuance of the crimes committed against the people, and hold them accountable all at one time. Go ahead, Ken.
The beautiful thing, and this is the exciting news, we are going to take back everything that they stole from us. Every nickel they stole from us, every unjust enrichment they took from us, and disgorge all the monies that they earned off of our signature. We do have a fantastic attorney, and I can't mention his name right now. But I will say where he's out of. He's out of Texas. We've had great conversations with him. We've engaged in a plan on how to go about this, on a mass joinder of some sort that we're going to term Blackacre litigation, because what this is dealing with all this wholly mythical virtual reality that we're dealing with there, and we're going to go back in and we're going to take back everything that they earned from us, and we're going to do that very simply. On the guy, we're going to dump foreclosure defense entirely. We're going to push it just like they pushed the helicopter off the aircraft carrier when we abandoned Saigon and left Saigon. We're going to push foreclosure defense and this idea of a debt that never existed. We're going to push it off the deck of the aircraft carrier, and what we're going to come back with is we're going to come back with very simple contract law. And it's very simple to prove. It's extremely simple. The evidence is overwhelming, and that's what's beautiful about this. So what we've got is we've got a platform that we're generating right now. There's a gal down here where I'm at right now, Abigail Adams. Using her, it's not really a name, but just to protect all the people involved and people that involved in this. Because what we're doing here is we're doing something dangerous here. We're going after the banks, and we're going to form up this lawsuit that's going to be a mass joinder that we're going to announce shortly that anybody can join. And we're going to, and I think that's going to build very quickly and very rapidly in numbers. There are other attorneys that we've been speaking with in other states. I know up in Connecticut, California, Washington are all very interested in what we're doing. And I see this as once we announce this and get this rolling, that this is going to take off in many, many directions. And the whole goal of this is we're going to start making a list of all the damages and harms that have been caused to you, whether you lost your house, it's already gone, or you're in the process of losing your house now, or even, we can even go to the extent of if you've never missed a mortgage payment and haven't been affected by this yet. You will eventually, but...
well, yes, you've been affected because you've had to strain your budget to be able to continue to make payments that were never due.
And that's the beauty of this. What we've got to do is we've got to dig ourselves out of this deadbeat hole. We've got to strip that veil away. And the beautiful thing about this lawsuit, and the beautiful thing about what we're doing here, is we're reaching across the aisle, so to speak, to the person who hasn't been affected by this yet, but has a mortgage, and kind of reaching out to them and saying, hey, you know what you really signed here, what you executed here was not a mortgage loan, but it was a lease agreement, and you're the creditor here. So what we want to do is we want to kind of merge. We want to unite. We want to unite the people that are in foreclosure, the deadbeat. We want to get rid of that deadbeat, because that's not true.
But good,
Ken, let me just insert here. When you say the word unite, because we're all on social media, we're all pushing, let's come together, let's stop fighting within ourselves, let's stop, you know, the gay straight thing and the black white thing and the blah 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 against the other blah 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 thing. And until we find a common ground upon which we can all unite, and I would say this is very likely to be that.
Yes. Well, the common ground here is the way that you attract people, and the way that you hook people, and the way you get person's attention is going right for their pocketbook.
Exactly. And that's the point I was making, is that we're all being affected in our pocketbook. We are the creditors. We are the host. We are that which they must have in order to continue to perpetrate this fraud.
And let's expand that. We're not just talking about mortgage loans here.
Oh, no, we're not.
About Sally Mae. We're talking about credit accounts. We're talking about car loans. We're talking about those stupid Credit Karma commercials that they have on television. We're talking, this is the issue of everything.
Exactly.
And that's what makes this beautiful. And the nice thing about this is it's simple contract law. And the nicer thing about it is all we've got to do is really lay the foundation of actual material fact, and it'll reflect back on 10 years of fraudulent case law, fraudulent foreclosure cases, because it's going to be looking in the mirror and it's going to be like, wait a second here, this doesn't, the reflection's different, it's totally different.
Right.
Well, and what I'd like to add here is this also, let me add this, is because we also know that there are good people listening who are brokers, who are real estate agents, who are attorneys, who are public servants, who are hearing this going, oh my gosh, they are right. I've seen this happen. I actually had participated without even knowing it, because you can participate without knowing you're participating. Hell, we did. We didn't know we were being used. So what I would like to put out is a call to action for all of those, because I'm going to tell you right now, if you don't start now taking the noose off of your own neck, you are paying for this. So you need to get your boots up, put your big boy panties and your big girl panties on, and you need to stand honorably, admit you may have participated in something you shouldn't have, and instead of going to jail, you want to help make this right.
And let's emphasize that there is no holder in due course. So every party that has put their hands on your documents, on your electronic file, on your signature is liable, and you will be named as a defendant, and you will suffer the consequences of that. So what Renee is saying is very good. You have, now that you have been informed, and let's just say this is the official unveiling of the information. You have been officially informed of the facts that we now have in our possession. You have an obligation. Maybe you don't. Maybe you have a moral obligation and a legal obligation to stand up and step forward and to not participate in this. Because if you continue
what's key for real estate agents, because real estate agents, now remember, I gave up everything because I knew once I found out in 2008 and 2009 what was really happening.
Yeah.
When I found out that modifications were a scam, they were just recontracting you and it was all a scam. You cannot mod fraud, first of all.
Exactly.
So I had to give up everything. There was no income. So what I'm saying to you as real estate agents, I've had so many of them say, well, oh my gosh, will that mean I get in trouble? Yes.
Yes.
Yes, it will. And you have an opportunity now to say, gosh, I was frauded, I was defrauded, just like the homeowners were. I was in a compartment where I didn't have all of the details or all of the context, and mea culpa, I didn't know. Now I know. You are responsible now that you know.
Yes.
And for those who have sold like 15, 20 homes, you're going to go, oh my God. Guess what? You are responsible. If you knew that that was a foreclosure and you had someone that told you, I am fighting to save my home, they're stealing it from me, and you went and offered them cash for keys, which is a whole nother can of worms we're not going to go into tonight, but you went in as the realtor because you were giving them cash for keys. You're the mediary vendor. You were the straw man at that point, FYI. Mr. or Mrs. Strawman, you better suck it up that straw, because you better get your butts in and start counting what you've done, because I'll tell you right now, your brokers are not going to be your friend. Your brokers are going to say they didn't know what you were doing.
Exactly, and you'll be the one that's tossed under the bus as the least, or you're the most expendable to cover everybody else's butt up the chain.
And that's what's happening right now. Think about it. Do we have the big bankers going to jail? No, we have those at the lower level, the people who had modification companies and frauded people, knowing they were frauding people. Yes. Or, these are so we know what has happened, and you have to start thinking in common sense terms. All the insurances that the attorney generals put together, all those billions of dollars of payouts, those didn't come to the people.
No, they went to subsidize the state budgets and the state pension funds
and the investors and the CAFers to keep retirement funds going. Well,
right. The off-book accounting that we're never subject or privy to see.
Right. Well, now we are.
That's what's nice about going at this from a contract law, because by defining what these instruments actually are, which is an installment lease to a future repurchase, what you're doing is you're saying, okay, this is not a mortgage loan, this is an installment lease. This is UCC 2A. So we're going to cancel the installment lease, and what's the first thing that happens when you cancel an installment lease? What do you have to do? You have two parties. You balance the books. Right. So right now...
And the books were balanced at closing. So any of these banks, the one question you have to ask when you closed is, were the books balanced at closing?
Well, here's the thing. Well, let me interject that before you go too far with that. Because there was never a mortgage loan, the loan was canceled because it's a lease. It was canceled. Why was it canceled? It was canceled and kicked down the road so that when they foreclose upon you, the money
can buy it back again.
Well, go ahead
and satisfy
the principal balance so that they can write it off on the tax shelters underneath the IRS and then stick you with a deferred tax bill 6 months after they kick you out of your house.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and let's talk about UD real quick, because we have a lot of people whose homes have been unlawfully sold at the court steps. And we know they can't be sold by these debt collectors. We know the sheriffs have been participating. We know the counties, the mayors, everyone has been allowing it to happen with blinders on because they were all making monies off of this.
Right.
Or their book entries. But what we have to realize now, too, is that UD is always being filed under the $25,000 mark. UD under 25.
You need to tell people what UD is.
Unlawful detainer. That means when they've given you, when they're kicking you out of your own home, saying that you're a tenant. Now remember, a lot of people, I didn't even think about it when we signed tenants in common.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Tenant. It was right there blatantly in our face, and we didn't even get it because we just thought that's the term that was used.
Sure.
Well, anyhow, when you get kicked out of your home in an unlawful detainer, they serve you a 3-day pay or quit kind of thing. Then you've got a month to answer. Then you go to court. Well, foreclosure, they put through the UD, which it should not be, because you are not their tenant. But technically, you are. But think about that. But the key here is the $25,000 or under. Unless your home is worth $25,000 or under, you should not be in that unlawful detainer court. Because first of all, they should not be able to steal your home non-judicially. You should not be able to have your home taken without a jury of your peers involved. And over $25,000 creates a tax liability for the parties evicting you.
Right.
So when you have an unlawful eviction going on, and it's $25,000 or under, you already have fraud being perpetuated upon the court. The judges know this.
Yep.
Because if you have $1 million home, if you have a $100,000 home, the property is being taken at the time of eviction, and that's when the funds should be taxed. But what they're doing is they're turning that tax liability over to you on a 1099. Now, mind you, we know that homeowner occupied is not being taxed on the difference, but the issue is they're still issuing 1099-As, which are abatement, like the property is vacated and no one lives there. Everyone gets those and said, why do I get that? Because 30 days prior to doing it all, they have to have an A filed, a 1099-A, and you only have 30 days, at which we didn't know, to argue that. So this is all about IRS fraud. It's all about, I sent it, let's...
Well, it's all about, when you get down to it, the patents do one thing. The patents find every single loophole, scheme, anything they can to preserve the tax shelter, to preserve the tax exemptions, and to exclude us as the commodity and stick us with the bill on this. And Renee was saying, the reason why these SOBs are so voracious and coming after people and throwing 80-year-old women out of their homes and disabled people out of their homes is because once they get that eviction, once they satisfy that eviction in an auction, the magic, what I refer to as the magic golden lockbox opens up, and millions of dollars of insurance monies and future compensation and future bonuses that violates RESPA, violates TILA, violates everything that is in law, opens up, and everybody gets a big payout. That's why they're so, and then what happens is, then for the tax exemption, because the reason why we're getting hit with the taxes is because it's seen that we made the sale. So we have to pay for the sales tax, essentially, right? Because we're liable for that, because we sold it.
Technically, we are the seller and the buyer. Remember, so instead, what many people say, and I'm going to go into the IRS office myself. I've already done the revocation of power of attorneys, the notice of identity theft, because this is all tied into identity theft, because that's how they do it. They're stealing our identities.
Right.
Well,
you have to give notice to the IRS that you are rescinding every power of attorney. You want to send it to. You want to give notice, and this is what is the simplest. And going back to that picture Ken has there of the drummer, and back before time began, contracts were the way everything was done. If you lived in a cave and you wanted your neighbor's rock, you contracted with him to take his rock to plug maybe a window in your cave. And that's what you did. He said, okay, I'll take that rock, you give me that skin, right? You've got animal skin.
Sure.
It's bartering. Well, what's happened here is, as we go through and realize that we have been made to believe all of this is so difficult. But bottom line is, what do? Anytime you're going to do something, you give notice. And you do affidavits. And then you do claims if someone's harmed you. If I enter into a contract with you, Shelley, just you and I, and we have two people sign it, we don't have to have a notary, because two people as witness gives us we do that. Just two signatures, ours alone, make the contract, but we have witness to that contract. And then all of a sudden, I have contracted to loan you my bike, and the next thing I know, you're taking my bike and you're doing long distance out of the country, right? You've crossed the Mexican border and you've now got my bike in Tijuana.
Okay.
Well, I'm going, wait a minute, Shelley, that wasn't our deal. You shouldn't have done that. You breached your contract. Yeah. Well, now you come to me and we settle. We say, okay, well, what is it going to do to make you happy, Renee? Well, wash my bike. Okay, great. Now we no longer have a victim. We're done. We move on. But what our country has gotten to is, because these are not courts that are lawful courts, they're admiralty courts, everything is about warring. We don't want to be at war with the United States. We don't want to be seen as belligerents in the court. We're men and women that want to be able to right our wrongs, and in the event, Shelley, you didn't want to wash my bike and we couldn't come to an agreement, we have the right to get a group of our peers to settle this for us.
Exactly.
And if it can't be settled, then okay, there's our cave that we're going to lock Shelly in for a week because she didn't wash the bike, right? That's how it should be, so simple. Notice, affidavit, and producing.
Sure.
And if you violate that contract, that's it. That's that simple. So what do we have here? It's that simple. We entered into what we thought was a contract to buy a home. We didn't know it was a contract where our home would already be paid off and ours, and we were allowing them to take our intellectual property, our life, our children. Don't forget, your children's identities were in those documents too.
Yes.
And warrants and liens that are used through the court can be used off of your children. So like Carol Keene and I have been saying for years, and Carol found this, there are fake cases that are made off of the backs, and this is the worst part of all of this. Women and children, think of Sharia law.
Mm-hmm.
Women and children are the least worthy of any ownership. They can't own anything. So why do you think widowers are having their property stolen when their ex-husband's dead for 10 years and all of a sudden last year he's signing contracts? No. Children are being taken into CPS. Homes are being destroyed. There is a very valid reason for this. We simply gave them the right to do it through our intellectual property, which are our estates, and it's running through the subcorporations of the U.S. Incorporated, laundering everything and property. Your children are property. So you have to learn. You have to learn what that means. And as Shelley and Ken know, that's a whole other show. But go ahead, Ken.
And that's an important thing here to note with these contracts. And with what's taking place here is and I just lost my thought.
I
was thinking about it. I was trying really, really hard not to interrupt you.
No,
I interrupt a lot. I lost my thought.
No, Ken, go back to the Sharia law. The children, the women, the not having the ownership. I believe that's where you were going because that's when you took the deep breath. I know you wanted to interrupt me there. So we know that through Sharia law, there's a reason it's all being laundered back there. Because as our country and as we as Americans know, right now we are at a pivotal time in our country.
I know what I was going to say.
Go ahead.
What I was going to say here is the one item that people will bring up automatically is, well, ignorance is no excuse here. Well, this is not ignorance that we're talking about. This was the intentional withholding of knowledge, sophisticated knowledge from unsophisticated consumers. So when we sign those agreements, the assumption of risk, we couldn't possibly have done any kind of a competent due diligence to assume any kind of risk because we had no knowledge of what we were executing. So for somebody to sit there and say, oh, well, ignorance is no excuse. This has nothing to do with the ignorance. This has to do with lack of capacity and lack of knowledge, actual knowledge of what we were signing.
Well, sure, and it's a big bait and switch scenario.
Well, ignorance of law, guys, that terminology you have to think about too. It's not ignorance of law as known by man's written hand.
Right.
Ignorance of law actually goes back to our unalienable rights.
Well, when you talk about the solutions, when you're talking about doing the solutions and the affidavits and everything, yes, the solutions are there. I mean, there are so many solutions here. It's uncountable.
Let me go back to
get to that point, though, you have to have a knowledge of what you were actually getting yourself into, so you got this huge gap between point A and point B. So yes, point B is all of the things that Renee is speaking about in terms of affidavits, in terms of what we need to do with the IRS, and so on and so forth. But to get to that point, we have to have an actual knowledge of what the hell the transaction actually was. And so that's what we're putting in place with this lawsuit, is saying here's the facts. So not only is this lawsuit going to put in it's going to return everything that was stolen from us, it's going to become simple at some point in time, which is going to be we'll have the actual form process to do an administrative, to do a claim, and so on and so forth.
Well, what I find so exciting about this is because with this intellectual property virtual reality that you're calling Blackacre, there has never been the ability to set up a platform to reverse that process, to reverse that virtual process, and that is so exciting to me because you're going to be plowing new ground, and this is going to spread like wildfire.
Yes, it is going to spread like wildfire. We are going to take back everything that was stolen from us, and we're going to do it as we the people.
Yep.
And you're right, this is going to spread like wildfire. So the intent here is to abandon foreclosure defense, and if you choose to be a part of this mass joinder or any other ones that spring off of it, fine. If you don't, then we encourage pro ses, because this is going to become a standard form document essentially. Go into the Fannie and Freddie contract. So if we can, really what this is a matter, because we're doing this because we know the system's crooked. We know that. We know for a fact that it's crooked. We know that. So we know we're not going to get help from the judge. We're going to force everything through, and the only way to force it through is to do it en masse. And I think that, and we've got the platform, and we've got I'm excited about it. I think this is. Not
only is it exciting, but people are going to hear this and say, "Oh, this effectually will shut down every corner, nook, and cranny of the crimes that have been committed." But what it's also going to do is leave us with the honorable platform still in place.
Yes.
That doesn't mean we're doing away with government. That doesn't mean we're doing away with anything, because everything was put in place, like Ken said originally. It's brilliant. It was a brilliant business platform. And I want you to know, as anyone who may not recognize, the intent, and Kennedy, actually, before his assassination, there was an intent that by the 70s, that every home where we had parents, mom and dad and children, every home would only have to have one parent working, and it would only be 10 hours a week. A lot of people don't know that. That was the plan. And that was because he was going to do away with what we're talking about now, with the trading of the people, the trading. And how could this be done? Because as you have your bonds that have been created, think about this. My son is working overseas, and he called me and he said, "Mom, you were right. Our bills are supposed to be paid. We're not supposed to have debt." Now, mind you, it took a taxi driver to get him to hear me, but that's okay. At least he heard, you know. And yeah, I started laughing. I thought to myself, well, he's, almost 32, and a taxi driver gave him an epiphany. So but that was okay. So he says, if you're a Dubaian, you get money every month, and every 2 years your bills are offset. Your mortgages are paid, your tickets are done away with. And he said, "Gosh, Mom, you're right." Now, I said, "Okay, and I want to ask you about the police there." He starts laughing. He goes, "Oh, they're so cool." He said, "They stand on the corner. They're there to keep the peace." I said, "Isn't that amazing?"
Amazing.
And he says, so what we have here is the ability through this lawsuit, which just by the preponderance of telling the nation we're doing this, it really gives those who are not the sociopaths, because we know it takes a true sociopath to do what they've done to us.
Right.
But those who aren't the true sociopaths, who maybe were that character in the 99 Homes who ended up doing the refurbishing and the flipping before he realized how much he was destroying people, and he had a conscience, we're saying to all of you with consciences out there who recognize that this whole facade, this thing of throwing people in jail with no victims, this thing of saying that, oh, you owe a ticket, for what? Oh, your back red, your taillight's out. Well, so what? Did it pop out in somebody's eye and cut their eye out while it popped out and broke? No. We've got to get back to common sense, and how we do that is getting back to the basics. Basic contract between two people, two parties. And Ken, you didn't bring up, but this is a very key component. In 1986, there was a platform for a product that I thought I created 3 years ago, by the way, so now Ken's burst my bubble on that, but it was actually created. It was a product where it did exactly what we have happen here. It created a retirement account based on your home, where you were not going to lose your home, but at the end of the term that you paid into it, you had a retirement there waiting for you, and your home.
It was a joint investment account and a mortgage loan.
Yes,
and what they did is it was brilliant. Yes, it was brilliant. They hijacked. Now I'm going to say one thing against that, or on that patent. That patent was in 1986. In 1993, a patent was issued entitled "The Privatization Marketplace," which lays out the New World Order, except it doesn't say that. It calls it privatization instead. But it lays out the New World Order in 1993. It was published in 2000, and that superseded and wiped out that 1986 patent, because now they said, okay, we can come in there and we could steal everything now because we're going to privatize it.
And the attorneys wanted to know how they could stay safe. So what they did through the insurances is they created the Dodd-Frank Act, which people don't realize was actually just to protect the attorneys, and it was all tied into the insurances, which go back to risk management in every county, every municipality. And what that meant was, and this just shocked me, and Jim Porter, I'm going to say your name, out in Colorado, he found this information. It was fascinating. But basically what the truth of insurance is if you contract your E&O insurance or your state insurance, right, through the state, but the party, the company that holds it is in Pennsylvania. Well, guess what? If you're an out-of-state insurance company, you don't have responsibility to pay anything in a state. So it's all, again, a facade, but what it does is it gives an appearance of responsibility to every attorney involved. So the Dodd-Frank Act ties into insurance and the attorneys and a facade of protection that truly does not exist.
Right.
It's only protecting them. So what I want to tell right now is that for everybody out there going, holy moly, that's a lot of information. It is. But it's all very simple. Even though it's a lot of information, it only takes one flat tire to stop your car from going forward. One flat tire can put you down on the side of the road, unless, of course, you want to ruin the rim, right? So with what we're doing here, like Ken says, it's very simple. There's so many pieces of fraud here that you don't have to have all of them. But guess what? Each component of fraud is treble damages, or 9 times the damages. So when you get a template of list of documents that could be robo-signed or, you know, breach of contract, you may have 150 different documents that are treble damages upon what you paid for your home. You start doing the math on that and think how much it is, guess what? You're only getting treble damages. They got 100 to 1,000 to thousands times what you paid for your home. So nobody's losing anything here.
Right.
We now have the ability to help this country heal. And I want to bring in a religious component here because Ken finally conceded to this, didn't he, Shelley?
Yes.
It took us a lot.
Oh, come on. You're going to go to that Vatican thing again, don't you?
Yeah. We have to tie in the Jesuits and the Vatican because
Can I set up the story for that, though, Renee? And then you can
I'm just going to end with this, is that I sent an email to the Inspector General and to the Treasury, the lead attorney for the Treasury, a year, maybe year and a half ago. And I said to them, because as you and I know, all three of us, you have to make things personal. So I said, what we have here is treason, trespass, forced intercourse, identity theft upon my intellectual property and my person and me, the living woman. But on top of that, through Social Security, IRS, retirement CAFR accounts, Treasury theft by the very elements at the lower level in the court system, the funneling and laundering of funds affects also he who owns the courts, which is the Vatican.
Right.
So you have to make this personal to the ownership at the top, because you know what? I don't care who you are. You have a business that you want to be sustainable. When all of a sudden you realize that your cockroaches at the bottom have been taking so much and making you liable to deaths, to injuries, to miscarriages, to lost animals, to fires, to all kinds of things that people don't tie into foreclosure or contracts, because your liability is huge. And guess what? When you go straight up that ladder and you're talking about your birth certificates, it goes straight to the Vatican. So this is why we've seen the Pope in the last few years coming out in 2013 telling every public servant that they can be taken accountable personally, excuse me. And then we had that judge in North Carolina after Rod Class uncovered that we have no courts, that we have no judges with oaths, that we have no public servants with lawful oaths. We had that North Carolina judge put out a warning to his local police saying, get everything out of your name.
Yeah.
So this is not conspiracy theory. These are facts. This is fact. This is contract fact. Go ahead.
And the nice thing about it is, again, it's all documented within the patent. So yes, it may sound like for what she's talking about with the Vatican. You know, until I came across a 1905 title abstract patent, which specifically mentioned the term liber, and I didn't know what liber meant, L-I-B-E-R. So I looked it up. I looked it up in Black's Law Dictionary. Lo and behold, here I find out it has everything to do with the Roman canons of law that goes directly into the Papal Vatican.
Exactly.
So there is no conspiracy theory. Everything that we're talking about, everything that Renee and I have spoken about tonight, it may sound wild to some people. It might sound, oh, this is just spinning conspiracy theory. No, we challenge anybody. We invite anybody. Look at the facts. The facts are right before your eyes. You know, all you got to do is reach out, and you got to just take the effort. Because nobody's going to hand this to you in a silver platter because it is complex when you get down into the core essence of this. But the simplistic part of this contract. But to really understand this stuff, we invite anybody to just do the research. Just take the time. There is no conspiracy theory here. Everything we're talking about can be proven unequivocally.
Well, and the facts remain that, like Renee was saying, there might be 500 versions of fraud within this bigger picture, but when you get right down to the fraudulent contract and the fact that if there is a fraud in one aspect, it nullifies the rest of it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And what we got here, the one person said to me, well, you can't prove science here. Science is the most difficult thing to prove with fraud. Well, yes, we can. We could take it right into the head offices, the executive offices of Goldman Sachs, of Deutsche Bank, of J.P. Morgan Chase, of Bank of America, Wells Fargo, on and on the list goes, all the way down to Judge Grasty, your probate judge in Burns, Oregon.
And the head mason, by the way, of that county. So. And
the head mason of that county, yes.
And it ties the BLM through all the caves and the caverns, which we're going to do another show on in the near future.
Yes.
Because what better way to have human trafficking, drug trafficking, gun running, than to have underground caverns that connect all throughout the United States.
And let's make one final. I know you want to wrap it up here, so let's just I want to make one final point. One final point is we're not out to destroy the banking industry because what they put in place is beautiful. It is remarkably brilliant. What we want to do is we want to reduce that. We want to increase that 1%, and we want to decrease that 99%. We want to do a redistribution of wealth and bring it back to all we want to do is we want to step into our rightful shoes as the creditor and the entitlement holder because there is no debt. And then what happens is we stabilize the economy, we grow the economy, and in the process we throw some people in jail and we uncover pedophile schemes and Mason schemes and all this other crap that's been going on for decades and centuries. But we don't want to destroy, and I think it's important to note this because some people will say, because you know it's a violation of the Patriot Act, it's damaged the economy. We're not out to we're not looking to damage the economy. We're out to heal the economy.
And it's called a reset. And a reset,
yes.
A reset has been done.
It's called a reset.
The reset was always part of our history until
yes, it was.
Until the greed took over. So what we're actually doing is we're actually out to rid the tyranny, which we're mandated to do. Our God-given abilities are to look out for our brethren and our sisters. And that is exactly why Lavoy Vidicum lost his life, because he was standing up for his brethren against the tyranny. And those men who murdered him were doing it for a paycheck and out of vengeance because they had such anger. Our goal is to live in peace once again without warring with the U.S. Incorporated. If the U.S. Incorporated wants to continue in war to raise money for their business, then they can do it. And when I say they, in their 10 square miles, let them run their business doing it. But leave the people, the good men and women of America, alone. Let us live free of the tyranny. Let us have our homes. Let us have our families. And as Kennedy wanted, he wanted us to live peacefully together and to raise our children and to have good schools and not to have Common Core. All of this one simple, even though it doesn't sound like it listening to us unless you know this platform already, this is very simple. This fixes all of it, folks. This gets Ammon out of jail. This gets Mr. Bundy out of jail. This gets the BLM out of the state. This gets your local government protecting you from the state who's supposed to protect you from the federal government. This is about getting our government back in shape, getting our government healthy again. So this whole premise is a simple, let's start over. Let's get back to our local communities. Let's not let the criminals run our local communities. And let's get voter fraud and everything else out of the way, because guess what? Once we do this, we no longer have India involved in counting our votes electronically. We know,
go figure.
You know,
we'll also no longer have vote padding by all the fake signatures that are padding the votes that are underneath our signatures.
Yeah, all those.
And no longer would we have criminals running for election.
Right, all those 112-year-old people who are still voting that we know don't exist.
Right.
All of the dead entities that they're still using. All of the towns that have more registered voters than they have in populace. This is all going to be fixed because nothing can withstand the simple fix of this contract fraud, because it all comes down to our homes. That's why they're not talking about it in they're not really talking about the foreclosures. They're not talking about it because once they start talking about it, they got to fix it. And I don't care what they think. They're not fixing it by saying, oh, the too big to fail, are you really going to take money from the big banks? Guess what? Get over it. They're going to take money from the big banks. They're not going to, but unless we get them out of there, it doesn't matter what we want. They're still going to do it. We just want the system to go back to honor.
What we want to do, as for my moniker there with the three drummer, with the drummer in the fight, is we want an American revival. Is what we're doing.
Yes,
exactly right.
We're going to put on our big boy pants. We're going to act like Americans.
Okay, let's wrap this.
Big girl pants. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, because you're in the company of women here, Ken.
Yes, I am. I forget that now.
So let's do this. Let's tell the people that are listening either now or when this goes up to YouTube that we will provide some basic affidavit notices, documents with a location for them to put in relevant information.
Yes.
And then we will keep everybody updated as to the progress of this new platform that Ken is creating with his helpers down there. And we need to just keep this on the front burner. More and more people need to know. We need to offer them an opportunity to join themselves to this lawsuit and the vehicle for doing that. So,
and
I'm sure
of it are forthcoming very, very soon.
Okay, fantastic. So thank you guys so much. It's been great to talk to you in this capacity instead of kind of behind the scenes, and I really appreciate your input, your friendship, your information. It's been terrific tonight, and thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, Ken. I'll talk to you guys later.
Thanks,
Have a good night.
Thank you, Shelley. Have
Good
a
night,
good
everybody.
Guys. Thank you, everyone.